Well, welcome. We are so excited to have you all here. And I'm really just thrilled to be collaborating with this particular team of educators. So we'll be introducing ourselves as we come on board. But this is really a session to bring us into the Restorative Leadership Institute. And to walk you into what that looks like, and to provide a moment together today. So let me begin by walking you into our mission as an initiative and ground ourselves there. So at the USD Center for Restorative Justice, within our K-12 initiative, we're really intending and working towards providing restorative justice practices, personal and professional learning, and embedded support to create restorative school cultures focused on healing, equity, and inclusion for all, resulting in high levels of academic achievement, social emotional growth, and thriving communities. And so today we are so excited to be part of, I'm personally really excited to be part of this collaborative to really bring that forward. And so let me invite Anthony to bring us into our check-in, and we'll jump into our content today.
Right, welcome everybody. So yeah, we are going to just do a check-in in the chat. We like to usually just kind of see how people are doing. It's typically something that we like to do as restorative leaders, is always find out how our people are doing, but we ourselves also check in. So we'll be using the chat for this, and we're going to be using the 1 through 10 scale, 1 meaning you feel awful, 10 meaning you feel awesome. So you just kind of choose your number in your head and kind of check in with yourself. How are you feeling right now? And I'll do that as well. And what I'll do is in the chat, you'll see that I checked in as a 9, very excited to be with this group. I'm kind of feeling excited just to start this off. So if you would, and thank you, I'm seeing people already. Thank you everybody for checking in. Great. And feel free to check in, be authentic with your numbers and your answers, but people are actually feeling pretty good if I'm reading this correctly. I'm kind of going through, and there's a lot of 7s, 8s, 9s, and I see, a 6, and there's some tiredness. Yeah, and then people are kind of related a little bit to the pandemic. Been a challenge, but the RJ work has been soul replenishing. I haven't heard that yet before, so thank you, Pete, for that soul replenishing comment. And then, so just kind of, if you would, just kind of scroll through the chat right now, just so you can see how people are and their comments, and see if you can sort of relate to anybody here. All right. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. And we definitely encourage you to do this. Really, at the start of every meeting, you can see how quickly you can do something like that, where now you get a sense of how people are, maybe who needs a little bit more support, right? That's why we do that. It also is a chance for us to humanize with each other, where the people, if you're the facilitator, for example, people begin to see you as that human being, rather than maybe the person in charge or something. So thank you, everybody, for doing that. And then the next one. So now what we want to do is we like to also begin with just a moment of mindfulness, right? By breathing. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is just wherever you are, just kind of get comfortable and take some what I would call nourishing and nurturing breaths. Just kind of a little bit, you kind of take some deeper breaths and just try to feel your lungs expand. And then as you release out and exhale, like let out anything that might be bothering you today. So just if there's a sense of stress or anxiety or sadness, just release it out, and then breathe in kind of the life and the goodness that sometimes if you even look at the photo on the screen, you can see the green leaves, and we know that the trees are producing the oxygen that we're breathing in, and we have a relationship with the trees and nature. So just kind of breathe in that life that you can see there in that green, right? And then continue to release out anything that you don't want to carry today. And then just try that on your own for a few breaths, and just try to breathe in that goodness and release out anything that is weighing you down. And as we finish this moment of mindfulness, I just want to acknowledge all of our ancestors, right? The people who went before us, the ones who worked hard so that we could have the life that we have now. And we acknowledge them with gratitude and just in any way that you can, just to be grateful for them. Thank you, everybody. So we definitely encourage you to have a time of mindfulness if you can, as you're beginning your meetings, staff meetings, department meetings, committee meetings, classroom sessions. Even just a 1 minute time to just have people be very present, because we know that within restorative practices, we really have to be present, right? And we can't be out somewhere else. We got to be present with people. So thank you, everybody, for doing that.
Hi, everybody. I am Marisol Quevedo Rerucha. I am the mother to Camerina Emilian Sofia. I am the daughter to Irma Navran. I am the grandmother to Isabela Luna, Cynthia Iliana, and Lorenzo Martin. And I am the very proud granddaughter of Carmen Rodriguez Castro, Alejandro Castro, Carmen Bedoya Quevedo, and Francisco Quevedo, and the very proud wife to Daniel. I am one of the co-creators of the Restorative Justice Leadership Institute. I am a career educator and currently serve as the chief of strategy and partnerships for the National Parents Union and serve on a number of boards. I am also the author of Beyond the Surface of Restorative Practices, Building a Culture of Equity, Connection, and Healing. Today's session is to support, the purpose of our institute is to support the K-12 school and district leaders in learning how to live, plan, and lead the implementation of restorative justice practices in a way that achieves not just systemic, but individual growth. And today, all of our participants are meeting the team that's developing this institute, and we are going to be giving you some restorative tools that can be used immediately. Please look in the chat, because Gwen is going to be adding our official handout for today. And so what we want to start with is the foundation for transformation. And as a school and district leader, what I have found is that the foundation of transformation is absolutely nothing new. It's those documents and statements that you build, and it should be created collectively with all of the stakeholders. It shouldn't be, what happens in a lot of systems is that agreements or a code of conduct, your belief statements, your mission and vision are created by a very small group, and then everyone is just expected to take them on. And what I really believe in the work that I do with systems, both school systems, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and every team that I'm a part of, is we create our agreements for our team, and we also create our belief statements. And from there, our mission and vision, and this becomes the North Star of our work. And so I'd like to invite Jenny to share, because this information is really nothing new. But we do it a little bit differently. And so Jenny, I'd like you to share, if you could, your experience with this process.
So I want to reiterate, when we came together as a team to go through this process, I felt like I've created agreements perhaps a million times. I've led groups in creating agreements. And there was something about the way that we came together and moved through this process really intentionally, talking through them and designing them together, and really taking the time to take them apart and do it from a place that was coming from our values, that felt different than what I've experienced before. And so I just want to, and I've been trying to articulate, even in my own mind, like what made it different and why I felt so attached to this process, when I was already committed to the idea of agreements and feel like they're a core part of having groups come together. And I think some of it had to do with the way that we took the time to be really intentional in thinking through not just having agreements, but having those agreements be operationalized. Like, how is this going to be that we would act differently together, that we wanted to hold on to? And I'm still trying to tease that out. So as we create, today we won't be creating agreements. Today we'll be sharing the agreements that we've created as a collaborative. But I think that process is part of what made it like exceptionally different in how we work together.
And we will be going through this process as a part of the Institute, so you'll be learning it. And I'd like to invite Lori to read our agreements, followed by Anthony to read our belief statements, please.
So we open every work session with our agreements. Be curious, and when conflict emerges, seek to understand what is at its root. In order to benefit our work, we commit to recognizing and honoring each person's voice and experience. Respectfully and lovingly disagree, agree, and ask questions. Communicate transparently regarding business, processes, problems, conflicts, and celebrate successes. Come as a humble servant committed to loving service. We commit to addressing our conflict and clearing our charge within 72 hours. Do what we say we are going to do. Anthony, will you read our beliefs?
Absolutely. We believe that restorative justice practices have transformational power for individuals, communities, and systems through human connections and relationships needed for true growth. We believe that love heals, unites, and is deserved and needed by all. We believe everyone can learn and teach under the right conditions. We believe that by being our authentic selves, we form a foundation of truth, honesty, and vulnerability, where we accept ourselves and one another as we are. We believe that all individuals in educational systems deserve the space for healing from systemic and generational oppression. We believe that restorative justice practices is who we are and not just what we do.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Anthony. And as I've shared, we'll be going through this process during the first day of the Institute. And now I'd like to turn it over to Lori, who is going to talk about this beautiful way called the restorative flow. Lori?
Thanks, Marisol. So we have this rhythm that we are calling the restorative flow. That is pedagogy, or a way to learn together in a professional community. And this is the process that we'll be using for tonight's learning. First, as we did in our check-in, we connect on a human level. This really helps to fortify community and to bring us together as people. And when relationships are better, the work that we do together is more meaningful and more productive. The second part is to learn together, and this takes the form of more traditional presentation of new content. And we will demonstrate this presenting two small pieces of new content tonight. After the presentation of new content, or the learn phase in the flow, there's moments of silence for reflection to pause and think and journal and make some internal connections. And then we circle up for dialogue around the ideas that we've just learned and reflected on. to help build our understanding. So we offer this restorative flow to you as a design for professional learning in a restorative school. And it's also a way to make decisions together as a group. So we will be happy to model this for you tonight.
And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with the connect. So as Lori said, that's part of the check-in, but because we wanted a model for you, we're going to go through the whole process. And Lori used this as a superintendent and built a fully restorative system from the school board to every single level. And now that entire system uses this flow. So Anthony, if you can take us through connect, please.
Oh, sure, Marisol, thank you. So when one thing that we would like for you to do is reflect right now on what does it mean to be a restorative leader? And so just begin to think of that. We'd like you to think of maybe what are some key values or characteristics of a restorative leader in your mind, right? So just kind of think of that. What words come to mind for you as you begin to think, what characteristics, what values does a restorative leader have? And if you would, we're going to use the chat, but I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, go ahead and type in your answer. You can, do a few words if you want, but then don't click return just yet. We're going to do it all at one time. So I'll let you know when we're going to do that. That'll give you a chance to go ahead and think about it. And then now's the time we're going to learn from each other. Okay. So when I say 3, we'll all just click return or enter, and then we'll see what people are saying. All right. 1, 2, 3. And so really what I'd like you to do is see if you can relate to any of the people that are, some of the words that they're saying, like whether they're saying being an ally, relationship-centered, forgiving, right? Authentic, vulnerable. What is it that you connect with another person right now? Is it compassion, empathy, active listener, curiosity, humility, understanding? Do you see some people sharing some of the words that you had in your mind as well? A builder of connection, maybe, inclusive mindset, empathetic, respectful, responsive, not reactive, humble, intro and introspective, always practicing authentic equanimity, constant learner, present. You can see how we can learn from each other. The restorative mindset is one that we say, even through a chat feature like this, as long as it is that restorative sharing, authentic sharing is happening, it means wisdom is coming from the virtual circle. We're like in a virtual circle right now. And so our role as facilitators right now is to go, okay, how can I access this amazing wisdom that comes from this group, where I might see, Erica says caring, supportive, curious, consistent, high expectations, empathetic, optimistic, strong, creative. So what that tells me is, I look at that, Erica, I kind of go, wow, man, that's a good challenge for me. Am I willing to be more caring and supportive, right? Empathetic, optimistic, strong, and creative. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be saving this chat file, and then we're going to do our best to send it to you in an email. And Gwen, our just amazing support person that we have, she's been very central in bringing us together, is going to try her best to save this chat and send you the wisdom that has come from this group right now. So thank you, everybody, for doing that.
Thank you, Anthony. For all of our participants, you have decades of experience on this panel here, all of us who are putting together this institute for you. And Anthony Ceja is well known, not just here in San Diego County, but nationally for the work that he's done. And so Anthony, I want to thank you on behalf of all of our students and staff and communities that have been impacted and continue to be impacted by your work. So I'm going to move into the learn section, and I'm going to talk about just what Anthony mentioned, the restorative mindset. You can go to the next one. Dr. Carolyn Dweck has done some amazing work around mindset, and she talks about the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So I really encourage you to go into her work. And you can see here the fixed mindset, like the way that it approaches challenges and obstacles, and like effort is minimal and doesn't take criticism well, and isn't really celebrating the success of others. And because we're human beings, we really balance between both. But what we want to embrace is the growth mindset. And a mindset is our mental attitude or inclination. So in restorative practices, that growth mindset means that we embrace discomfort. It means that we're challenged, we're uncomfortable, but we do things anyway. It means that we are consistent in our practice, just like I saw in the Chatterfall. Not only are we authentic and vulnerable, but we model. And we really see this as a way of being, as opposed to something that you just do. When you are a restorative leader, you are open to feedback, and you give feedback, and you really try to maintain judgment. And also we celebrate one another. And along with our mindset, I coined this term heartset, because I believe that we also carry within us, in our heart, that this work comes from our heart and not just our mind. It's this beautiful combination of both. And our heartset is what grounds our thoughts and actions, and they come from the beliefs that we carry in our heart. And let me give you an example of where my restorative heartset comes from. Brian Stevenson, who founded the Equal Justice Initiative, he wrote the book, Just Mercy. He said that each of us is more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And I think, how beautiful would it be if all educators believe that about our kids and believe that about each other. Also, my elder, Hakeem Alaji, who was a practicing Muslim, has taught me that he practices loving kindness and nonviolence towards himself and others. And I try to do that in my daily life. And also, so part of this restorative heartset, I really believe in forgiveness, grace, and mercy for myself and others. So for me, my heartset goes back to what Mother Teresa says. And she says that when we don't have peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. My mindset is that we belong to each other. And that is how I want to continue to walk in this world. So I want to give you 1 minute to just go ahead and take a moment and reflect. If you have your phone, or if you have a piece of paper and a pencil, what is your heartset? What is your mindset? So we're just going to give you 1 minute. And I'm going to set my alarm. Thank you for that time. And we're going to be going over this in a more deeper way during the Institute, but I would like to pass it over to Lori, who is going to extend our learning and talking about different ways of implementing both policy and practice. Lori?
Thanks, Marisol. That was really absorbing. I found myself being taken away in that moment of reflection. Not enough time. But you can advance the slide when as Marisol said earlier, my work as a superintendent involved leading systemic transformation of a school district. And I don't think we knew what a journey we were stepping into when we started to implement restorative practices in 2015. I think we thought we would implement circles with students, to be honest with you, but the more we learned about the restorative practices, the values and the philosophical tenets of a restorative approach, the more we learned that it was changing and transforming everything that we did as a school system. So advance the slide when, just to give you a couple examples of these changes, or to compare and contrast. Typically, these policies are developed from a hierarchical framework where executive level leaders, the superintendent and the Board of Education sit in a boardroom and decisions are made. This is really referred to as a top-down approach. It's very typical. Usually policies are conveyed through one-way communication to everyone who is expected to follow them. If there's any input from the school community, sometimes school boards or district leaders will maybe conduct a survey, maybe ask, often there's public comment at board meetings. Sometimes it's very passionate public comment. Sometimes a town hall might be held, but all of these methods are not real true dialogue, a give and a take of ideas and seeking to understand. These are all methods of one-way communication. And then typically, the policies are handed down. But in restorative leadership, it's just the opposite. The stakeholders or everyone who's going to be affected by the policy is brought together. And, there's this mantra in restorative practices, don't talk about us without us. So you gather together the parents or the students or the faculty or staff who will be affected by a policy, and you have structured dialogue using circle process and a talking piece to really learn and understand what the needs are and how those needs affect the people who will be governed by a policy. And then together, there's a co-creation process of finding solutions to meet those needs. Now, after all of this input is gathered, of course, there's a formal process of writing a policy, but what's important is that everyone's had an opportunity to be heard. So the other example I wanted to give is a compare and contrast of typical leadership strategies and restorative leadership is the faculty meeting. This photo on the left is really pretty common, one-way communication. The faculty gather in usually the cafeteria, and the leader or authority figure makes announcements. And if there are questions, often they're asked and the leader's expected to have an answer. Often these meetings put a lot of pressure on the leader. And I don't think too often people walk away feeling like faculty tend to feel like they weren't heard. Sometimes they feel like they aren't understood. And one thing that often happens is the most confident voices in the room rule. And those voices are often reinforcing a negative viewpoint, or very often an us versus them paradigm. So that's very common in many schools. But a restorative leader would strive to use circle process to share power and have sincere dialogue on issues. And as soon as a group of faculty circles up with their principal or their building leader, there's an equalizing of power and there's an equalizing of voice. So when the talking piece is passed around, and this is done with even groups as large as 50 people, then even those more timid members of the school faculty are given voice and given an opportunity to be heard. The prompts that are used keep the conversation on track instead of wildcard questions in a typical faculty meeting. And it also is viewed as an opportunity where the answers come from everyone among the faculty, not just the leader. And everyone has an opportunity to contribute to co-creating answers to dilemmas and answers and finding solutions together. So those are just two examples of how typical school leadership conducts affairs and how a restorative leader would do things in a way that involved everyone, created equity, and co-created solutions.
Thank you, Lori. So what we're going to do now is give you an opportunity to reflect on that content that we just shared, and to reflect. So go back to your scrap piece of paper or your phone or whatever you're jotting down your notes to yourself, and we'll give you about 3 minutes to think about how does what you've learned about a restorative mindset and heartset and systemic transformation align with or challenge the current culture and or the processes at your school or your district. And then we'll have a chance to debrief that in some breakout rooms after you've thought about that for about 3 minutes. So Marisol, let me pass to you to take us into dialogue around this.
So you are experiencing the restorative flow that Lori created. And it started with Connect, where Anthony went through and asked what your definition of a restorative leader was, and we did the chatterfall. So it gave us an opportunity to connect through the chat. And then Lori and I went through the Learn. I shared some information on the restorative mindset and heartset, and Lori talked about what restorative practices really look like in policy and in practice. And Jenny carried us through Reflect, where you had some time to go through this reflective question. And now we're going to move into dialogue. So you're going to have an opportunity to talk to one another. And in dialogue, I went ahead and we're just going to ask you to follow the circle agreements that we have. So Gwen, if you can move forward, please, in the slides. So we're moving into dialogue. And our circle agreements are, you can pretend to have a talking piece. So one of the things that I'll do with groups is you can hold something up, and that signs, that you want to have the space to talk. You can decide once you get into your group, use I statements. I love what Lori shared. Don't talk about us, but talk with us. And so only talk from your space. Also, you're going to be speaking and listening with dignity and respect from and with the heart. We ask that you stay in the circle for the time that you'll have, which will be about 4 minutes, and that you honor the privacy of those in this circle and not share what was shared with you. What I love the Chinese character because it has 6 different words in the character for listen. And if you break it down, when you listen, you are giving your complete attention. Your eyes and your ears are focused on that person, and you are listening with the oneness of your heart and the respect that you would give a king. As you go into your circle, if you can move into the next slide, please. The other thing in leadership that for us is really important, and I love what Dave Chief says, who is an Oglala Lakota. This work, it's about human beings, it's about humanity. And we have to really be willing to step out of our positional roles and any ideas of authority that we may have or positionality, whether it's as a teacher, as a parent, as the school leader, as the principal, and really enter this space as a human being. And what Dave Chief tells us is that the circle has healing power. He says, in the circle, we are all equal. When in the circle, no one is in front of you, no one is behind you, no one is above you, and no one is below you. The sacred circle is designed to create unity.
Thank you. I'm spotlighting myself. So I want to say it's so wonderful to meet you. I'm so glad we got that brief moment to see your faces. I just wanted to share briefly how the Institute came together. So we also realized, like hindsight's 2020, we didn't really introduce ourselves. So I want to share, I'm Gwen. I'm a graduate student at USD in leadership and restorative justice, but really I'm a former high school teacher. And I just remember my time in the classroom being very focused on control, very focused on behavior, very focused on discipline. And I saw that reflected in my relationships with my students, which was very often not good. And I kind of knew like what we're doing in the classroom is not healthy for anyone in this space, but what could be different? And so that was kind of the question that I brought when I went into doing my graduate studies. And through that work, I've met an incredible team of people. So I just want to highlight, Laura DiCarlo is a former superintendent, bringing her wisdom to our group. Anthony Seja is the district RJ coordinator for San Diego, actually county RJ coordinator for San Diego. So I think that's about 27 districts, or correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony.
It's 42.
Oh, 42. And then Jenny is another PhD scholar focused on restorative justice and education as it relates to public health. And then Marisol is a former K-12 administrator, now works for the Parents Union, author, and just incredible RJ practitioner in all ways. So through the center, we've come together and are very excited to offer this institute. Really quickly, I just want to highlight, Each day has a specific focus. So day one is on restorative leadership. And in the afternoon, that's really focused on how do we develop that restorative mindset, heart set, those agreements, that mission, that vision, those beliefs, because anchoring to that restorative mindset is so essential to implementing this on a school-wide basis. On day two, we start looking at frameworks for implementation. Like, well, how do we frame, of course, a multi-year approach to implementing restorative justice across time? And also on that day, we're taking our first dip into community building. I'm very jazzed about that last session, supporting educators and staff in discovering the restorative mindset and heart set within themselves. That idea of buy-in, that we're all part of this community, is so essential. On Wednesday, we're talking about restorative justice tiers 2 and 3. That's particularly looking at the way harm functions in schools, identifying systemic harm and interpersonal harm. We'll start that in the morning, and then the afternoon doing some role playing and some case studies. For instances of harm, how do we respond in the school setting? Day 4 is systemic implementation, looking at, okay, we've had this conversation, we have a view what it looks like, what am I taking back to my school? So that's on phases of implementation, taking that policy deep dive, talking about the conditions, where are you set up for success, where are you going to encounter challenges? And then our last day is kind of nuts and bolts lessons learned. We're going to be thinking creatively about how RJ practices can be used, and then also thinking about inviting a panel of practitioners doing this work on a school or district-wide basis. The last thing I'm going to highlight is this is also very much for you as a leader. And so each morning we'll begin with mindfulness practices, just as Anthony said, like how are we in touch with ourselves as we engage in this work? And then each day we'll close with a restorative circle for participants. What does this mean for you, who you are as a leader? What do you want to take back to your school or district? So that's kind of a big overview of what we're looking forward to for those 5 days. And I think I'm just going to pause here in case there's any remarks from the rest of our training team here. So in that case, in the flyer that you received, there's more information, but we just wanted to share a little bit more here. It will be 5 days, January 10th through 14th at University of San Diego. So we're really looking to engaging together. And with that as the highlights, I'm going to go ahead and pass to Anthony.
All right, thank you, Gwen. And Gwen, maybe in the chat, or I'm assuming they already have your email address.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And I'll re-add the flyer to the chat because I know some people came in after I shared it initially. So we'll make sure to share it again.
That's great. Thank you. That was really well done, Gwen. Thank you. So, as we're kind of now coming to a close, we want to ask you, just kind of maybe one thing you're taking away from our time together. I know this was a short amount of time. It's done, intentionally so that it's not taking too much time out of your day, but to also give you a taste, kind of like an appetizer for the that week-long experience. But if you would just kind of, maybe one thing that you're taking away could have been something that one of us shared. It could have been something that one of you shared in your small groups. It might have been something you reflected on, you wrote down. But if you would, in the chat, go ahead and just write that, just type it out, just whatever that is, just something that you're taking away from this session. Mindfulness and being intentional in my actions as a future practitioner. Great. Hope, right? We're stalled in our efforts and it's been frustrating, but whenever I come to something like this, I feel re-energized to keep going. Perfect. I like the heart set. Absolutely. Heart set, definitely. Oneness, community and connection. Connect, learn, reflect, and discuss. Excellent. Dismantling hierarchy. Be the work before we do the work. RJP are an anecdote to toxic institutions. Learned about heart set. Good. Connection. Use mindfulness to help everyone be present. Heart set and mindfulness. Antidote. So those are some great, great comments. Thank you. And again, we'll be trying to save this chat and send it to you so that you'll be able to continue to sort of reflect and see what the wisdom from the group. right? And then, by the way, Laura says, when we don't have peace, it is because we have forgotten we belong to another, the one that Marisol said from Mother Teresa. Thank you, Laura. All right, so let's go to the next one.
And I would like to, aside from inviting you, of course, to the Institute where we want to see you here in person, but we also invite you to stay connected to us. And so if you want to go ahead and screenshot this or capture it, but here is our email and where you can also find us on social media. I went ahead and I added Beyond the Surface of Restorative Practices can be found at any online bookstore. And I don't see Anthony's email there, but if you email Gwen, she can connect you. So we invite you to remain connected with us. And then lastly, it's so beautiful to see the connections that you have, what it is that you're taking with you. And we have one last offering, and that is in Lakesh. In Lakesh is the Nahuatl concept that we belong to one another. And Luis Valdez, who is a Chicano playwright who wrote and directed La Bamba, and started at Teatro Campesino during the Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta's farm workers movement. In a larger piece called El Serpiente Pensamiento, he shared the concept of In Lakesh, and he says, Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. And I offer this to you in this time. We offer this to you in this time. This poem was actually outlawed. It was not allowed to be read in schools in Arizona, and I believe in Texas also, which is so mind-blowing because this concept, this beautiful concept that we belong to one another and we're responsible to one another is what we believe is what is needed to transform these systems that have created so much harm. And it's time for us to not only embrace the belonging to one another, but to embrace our healing. So we thank you for this time. And with that, we close out. We hope to see you in January here in San Diego for the K-12 Leadership Institute. Thank you.